2020. So we own the building now outright as an organisation, and we have about 50 artists, stroke creative people within the building. So that, like I say, it's a long journey. I've been a board member, and for that period of time, I've stepped down once, and got invited back to join the board. And ultimately, I will leave the board again. But we're in at this moment in time, reasonably financially safe space. In fact, we'll find out next week or very soon about NPO funding from Arts Council England. But at the moment, we're relatively secure.
Okay, and can you tell me a little bit about the Forbes project as well?
So Forbes project is in development. That's me. Aspiration for developing a number of curatorial projects, and that's equally curatorial and supporting other artists. So one of the projects we're hopefully moving forward with this year stroke next year is a part residency program at primary for black graduates from Royal College of Art, and NTU have committed to free scholarships for students, black students at NTU. So part that took a process of negotiation over the last couple of years. So that will be a collaboration between Forbes Project, primary organisation of many circles by Rebecca Blackwood, NTU and RCA, and myself bringing that together. So Forbes projects, curatorial projects, a number of kind of projects, shows I want to develop, and part of it's going to be academic as well, so further research and engaging with hopefully NTU. I've got a meeting with NTU in a couple of weeks' time, again about a long-term commitment from them to it as well. It's still quite early stages of conversation, so there's not much more I can say of that. So, but that is the aspiration, really.
Yeah, NTU is a good university. NTU houses Nottingham Black Archive. So when the archive was, homeless, they took us in, and they've been very supportive. So that's a good university to align yourself with.
And we've got, just on that point, so Michael Marston is the Chief Exec of the Art and Design Department. He's on the board of primary as well, so we've got that relationship with NTU, and to date he's been very supportive.
So you're doing all of this great work in the community through primary, through the Forbes project. Do you see yourself as a public persona?
Not really, and I'm not sure what that means. You might have to define public persona. I think I'd see it probably more as my art practice goes public. The show, like I say here, or shows anywhere, I'd make my work, you put it on it, and then it's left for the public to come and see. But I don't. But it's, again, a good question, because one of the things I'm very conscious of, and I want to do more and learn more, is actually public speaking, part about my practice, but part about developing, I'd say my practice, but developing a wider conversations of bringing in partners. So public speaking has not necessarily been my forte to date, but I'm very conscious. I do want to do more, and I'm thinking about how that could probably be part of my practice as well. I'm not sure if that fully answers your question about public persona. You mean in terms of doing stuff for a wider public benefit?
And partly that, but also, also I think I wanted to know, does the community recognise you when you go out and you're shopping in the supermarket? Do people come up to you, Michael Forbes, the man with the solo exhibition? Are you seen as that kind of?
No, that's short answer to that, and that's not necessarily what I aspire to. I'm happy to have wider conversations around art practice, but some of it is about the art is not necessarily me. My in some ways, that's a good question almost about art there, and the work I make is not necessarily about my individual life and existence. I think my art practice is a lot more broader than me and a lot more global, international, or a wider, I'm not sure the term, because in many ways, bring it back, I live a relatively boring existence in Nottingham and Sherwood, but my practice, as you see, is more exciting than, say, the life I live as an individual. I think I'll think that one through a bit further. Does that make sense?
Yes. So your work is talking about political issues, Black Lives Matter, the disparity between black and white, etc. And
migration. But I live a relatively comfortable life in Nottingham, so I see. Only last week I was in Sicily, so I see migrants and speak to them about their existence, and my life is pretty much far removed from their work, but my conversation will be about their existence. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. So
I cut in.
Yeah, no. That's yeah. I guess because your work is really speaking out about all of these issues. Do you feel you as an individual as well? With the privilege, I guess you have. Here you are at the lakeside with a solo exhibition, jet setting all over the world, in Sicily last week, where will you be next week, etc. Do you feel that you need to take on board some of these issues in your work and speak about them too, because of your privileged position?
But don't forget, equally I say, but I'm not free of that conversation of race and kind of being the subject of race or racism or microaggressions. I'm not free of all that, but I'm free of the conversation around migration. But I can, I'm trying to think, the Poets Against Racism, the event a few months ago, I was subject to racism on the way home from that, cycling home from that. So the conversation of, like I say, racism and race, I am not free of.
Mm-hmm. Are you optimistic about the future of your sector? That there will be this change that we've been talking about, equality, diversity, that you will get this support and you need to develop your practice? Are you optimistic about that?
I'm optimistic to continue making work and a commitment to art practice. Clearly, the challenge even for the arts will be around levels of funding going forward, so that's a challenge. But then I think that always presents a opportunity for artists, like people was talking about, obviously COVID and lockdown, and people were struggling. But for me as an artist, I actually had a good time through COVID because I just focused on my practice, I've got 6 photographic books on the go and in the pipeline, so I edited that, did a lot of reading and writing. And so for me, I was speaking to artists and I was saying almost this is the best time if you're kind of, you financially survive, this is a good time for creativity. And if we go into hard times as a society, and don't forget hard times only for few, there are clearly, there's a lot of cash and finance and there's a lot of very wealthy people out there, so it will only be for a few, but that should spark a good level of creativity for artists. So I'm excited about that. The sector, I have degrees of confidence, but it wanes as well. I think it's one of those, there's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and that's how I feel about the arts. As we mentioned earlier on, it's kind of following through on these grand statements, which I'm not sure I'm convinced about.
So politics is very heavily evident in your work. Are you involved in politics in the sense, are you involved in any kind of unions, any membership to any kind of trade union organisation or anything like that? Are you involved in politics on that level?
No, and political parties I don't necessarily engage with, and like I say, I have a kind of socialist values, But equally, I have small C conservative values. I've kind of worked within property in the past, and kind of that is about kind of generating income and profit. And even though I'm not engaging that going forward because I've committed to art practice, but I still have very much a number of conservative values, and that's elements around generating income, clearly around the family, supporting the family, education. I've got a number of conversations internally as well as in my family. I've got 7 nephews to a degree. They're all underachieving, and so that is something concern for me. But in terms of any either union or political parties, I think, again, it's elements through my work and conversations. I think it's being free of being involved with organisations. That means I can say within my practice what I want to say.
Do you vote?
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
So just going back one step, what's the relationship then between money and your practice?
There isn't one at this moment in time other than money funds making work. I actually do want to be represented by a commercial gallery. That is an aspiration. But in terms of money, it's really about financial survival for me, but then making work. Materials, it's making shows are not cheap. They are, and making new work is not cheap. And so that's really the only relationship at this moment in time. I'm trying to think. That's the only obvious one. By asking that question, did you feel there's more?
No, I just wanted to know. I mean, I interview a number of different people. As you know, I'm a writer, so I'm around lots of writers, poets, and sometimes the catalyst for their art is that they're going to be big, rich, and famous, and so money is really at the centre of their development, their production. So I just wanted to know what your relationship with money and your art.
Yeah, I think again, there's a danger if you are producing artwork for a commercial market or just to sell. There's going to be compromises, and at this moment in time, my practice is the work I want to make and I want to discuss. And it's not compromised, but I am very conscious. Say the photographic prints, the carnival work, they are limited editions by the nature of the aspiration to sell work, and I'm very conscious that people buy work, particularly kind of a number of people who commit to a collection art, they want limited edition, and that creates a value within itself, a limited edition. But the sculpture work ends up being a limited edition just by the very nature of the materials available. That at this moment in time, what I've made sculpturally, that work is limited just by, like I say, what I've made the work. The materials I've made the work by. There is a limited amount I have around my studio or acquired.
What advice would you give to a young person starting out in your field today?
I would. Education's very important, like I say. I think there's so much you can do on your own and develop your creative practice and conversation, but kind of education. And in some ways, it doesn't necessarily have to be formal education, but it has to be broad. And like I say, some of that education is just watching a range of artists on YouTube. There is an education within that, and kind of keep watching, taking on board their conversations about how they develop their practice. But I would equally advise a formal education, whether that's a foundation course, a degree course, and then ultimately a MA and PhD. PhD, we'll see. It's up to people. But I think all of those add to a practice, so I would recommend that a route. I think doing it shorter would probably a shorter time frame than I've done it. I'd recommend, like I said, the MA, I've done it recently. In hindsight, and I probably should have thought about doing it earlier. I wish I'd done it earlier, but it's pointless saying because it is what it is. But I'd recommend, I think it's get your foundation done, get your practice in place, and then doing a degree, and understand that once you've done your degree, develop your practice, and then once your practice is in place and you think you plateaued with it, that would be a good time to consider an MA. I wouldn't necessarily recommend from BA to MA straight away, because you're almost wasting the education to a degree, because you're getting it back to back, but you've still got to develop your practice